I'm sharing 10 steps on how you can stop your shopping addiction and become a stylish and also conscious clothing consumer without blowing the bank and without having to change up your routine and your lifestyle too much. So let's dive in. We've had a lot of great discussions the last couple of episodes on the podcast. Brittany from the Sustainable Fashion Forum came on and she talked a lot about consumer psychology and shopping addictions. And then Cynthia we had on in our last episode and we talked a lot about living consciously and more mindfully. And since April, this month is Earth Month, I wanted to kick it off on how you can become a more conscious clothing consumer and do it in a sustainable and manageable way for the planet, for your wallet, and also in a way where you can actually continue to live more consciously and more mindfully. And it's not going to just be for a week, like I talked about in Cynthia's episode last week, where you can just go vegan, go zero waste, stop buying any clothes for a week. And then after that, you fall off the bandwagon and you decide it's not for you. So we don't want to do that. I'm going to give you 10 steps on how you can be a conscious clothing consumer that's still stylish and still has clothes for their lifestyle without breaking the bank. And before I dive in, I did want to really share my story, or my villain origin story, I like to call it. But we're going to go way back. So when I was younger, I was bullied, and I kind of talked a little bit about this on the podcast before, but I was bullied because I grew up in a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. I looked different. I ate different things. I wore different clothes, and I was teased for it. And at the time, all I wanted to do was fit in. And I felt like food and clothing and everything was kind of a shield to just be like everyone else and be quote unquote normal. But like, what does that even mean, right? Anyways, so that's where I first felt like clothing made such a big deal. And I felt like clothing could be armor in the world because it can really showcase who you are, but also help you fit in with people. And thinking back to younger Selina now, it honestly kind of breaks my heart that she felt that way, but we are shaped by our past experiences. And I've done a lot of reflecting to kind of realize that. So anyways, I had that experience. And then when I was working in a corporate 9-to-5 environment, I've been really candid and transparent about the fact that I did not love my job. And because of that, I really tried to find other ways to be happy outside of work. And a lot of these ways were unhealthy coping mechanisms. So I started retail therapying myself better. I would buy clothes I didn't really need just to get that little dopamine hit and have a cute little outfit to wear to work. So I felt better about myself. Again, using like clothes as that shield again. And yeah, like I really numbed myself by buying things I didn't really need, going to happy hour, doing all these things. And it all came to a head when one day I wore a polyester blouse to work. And if you're a longtime viewer of the channel or listen to the podcast or know my story in general, you will know this is my villain origin story. So I bought this polyester blouse. And at the time, I thought it looked cute. And my mom, she studied fashion design in Shanghai. So fashion's always been a part of my life. And she would always drill into me how bad synthetic fibers were. But I didn't really care. I was just like, whatever, this is cheap, this looks nice, and I'm just going to buy it and wear it to work. So I did that. And the rookie mistake I probably made was, first of all, buying polyester, but second of all, not washing it, which is so gross. It was from a fast fashion brand, and honestly, like, who knows where that's been, but I was just lazy and I was just like, whatever, it's fine, I can just wear it to work. And it was, I think, 11:35 a.m., but I had a few meetings in the morning, and then I just felt progressively more and more itchy. My skin felt like it was burning up, and I do have sensitive skin, so I had like rashes and things like that in the past, but I've never had it happen at work like this. Like usually it's triggered by an allergic reaction. Anyway, so I go to the washroom, and I'm like, what is going on? I check the tag and the blouse, realize it's polyester, and do a Google because my skin has never reacted like this before. So what is in this stuff and why is this happening? Lo and behold, discover polyester is made out of crude oil, decide to take an antihistamine at work, figure it out on the train ride back home that it's not great for you, like my mom said, and that led me into this deep, dark rabbit hole of fast fashion and figuring out and learning the dirty side of the fashion industry and all the harmful effects it has on the environment, the people, and the planet. So yeah, that's really my villain origin story. And I just remember being so shocked that no one at the time around me was talking about this. So I did so much research. I watched all the documentaries I could get my hands on. I listened to a bunch of podcast episodes. I interviewed people in the industry locally around me. And I just spent hours and hours going down rabbit holes, reading research papers, looking at scientific reports, like all this stuff. And by the end of it, I had probably 10,000 hours worth of research, and I was just sitting on it. And whenever I would meet up with friends or family members, I would just talk incessantly about this, and they would listen, they would entertain me, but also a lot of them said, Selina, why don't you talk about this to the greater public? Like, why don't you put all this research together and do something with it? And that's when I decided to self-publish my first book. And it's an ebook because that's more environmentally friendly, but it's called The Recloseted Handbook, Your Sustainable Fashion Guide. And if you've been around for a while, I published this in 2019, and I still think a lot of what's in there is still very, very relevant. And I am going to essentially walk you through high level the different parts of the handbook, because I created it mainly for myself because I had so much research and I needed a way to go through it and organize it and streamline it to make it make sense for me, but also work for my lifestyle. And I really wanted to implement and do better based on what I was learning. So I created this handbook, and it was originally just for me and my friends, but I decided to sell it because I did put so much work into it. And so if you haven't checked out the handbook before, you can find out more information and also get your own copy if you want at recloseted.com/handbook. The link will be in the show notes. And if you want to use code podcast, you can get 10% off for Earth Month, which is awesome. So like I mentioned, I'm going to walk you through high level the outline of the handbook so that you have the steps, but just know that in the actual handbook, I give you all the nitty gritty and you will be handheld through it. But I'll do a quick overview in this episode because I do think that a lot of it is important and will help get you going. The first step is really figuring out your why. And I talk about this a lot when I work with our clients too. And whenever someone starts a new business, you really need to figure out your why and why you're doing this. But in your case, you want to figure out why you want to be a more conscious clothing consumer and why you want to potentially live a more sustainable lifestyle holistically. For me personally, once I found out more about the fashion industry, I realized two things really stuck out to me. So the first one being the unethical treatment of garment workers. I talk about a lot of different incidents in the handbook, but it is really heartbreaking if you think about it. A lot of the people making our clothes aren't being paid what they should be paid. And on top of that, they are being forced to work in conditions that are unsanitary a lot of the times and also unsafe. There's a really big factory collapse back in Bangladesh almost 10 years ago now called the Rana Plaza factory collapse. And it could have been entirely prevented. But a lot of these brands ignored the warning signs, which were like cracks in the building. Workers would complain and bring it up, but brands just didn't really do anything about it. And lo and behold, the building collapses and over 1,000 people died. When I found out about this, my mind was blown. Like, that is the price. That is the true cost, the real price of our $5 t-shirts and our $15 pairs of pants. Someone's paying for that, and not in money, because we all know we're not paying that much, but people are paying it with their blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of the times their lives, which in my opinion is not fair or just at all. So that piece really stuck out to me. And then the second piece that really grinded my gears was actually the amount of textile waste that is going on. A lot of people talk about the unethical labor. There's lots of powerful images and videos on the internet, but not a lot of people talk about the end of a clothing's life cycle and what happens once you're done with it. A lot of what we quote unquote donate actually doesn't end up with someone in need just because there is so much clothing out there. Donation shops, charity shops, they tend to be overloaded. And so whatever they can't sell, they tend to ship overseas or it goes to the landfills. And the shipping overseas is really dangerous because right now, there's a lot of areas in the global south predominantly that is taking in global north's stuff, and they don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. And so it's really heartbreaking that they're left to deal with all of our textile waste and our shit, and it's affecting their economy, it's affecting their environment. And so that piece really made my blood boil as well, which is why those two things were really my why to shape up my own behavior. And on top of that, personally too, buying fast fashion and buying a lot of clothes is expensive. It adds up. Even if you're only spending, let's say $20 to $50 on something, it still adds up when you feel like you need a new outfit or a new look all the time. And so personally, I just wanted to save more money as well. So the first step in all of this is to figure out your why. And in the handbook, I go through the whole linear economy of the fashion industry. This would take like the whole episode if I were to go through it, but essentially I give you a lot of stuff and it gets a little bit depressing. I'm not going to lie, but I think it's important for us to know you can't stay ignorant, and it's important for you to know all of this so that you can really piece and take out what's important to you, figure out your why so that it can intrinsically motivate you to change your behavior. So step 2 is something I actually talked to with Cynthia on last week's episode, and she brought this up as well, and I love this, but you need to accept that you're going to be imperfectly sustainable, and that is okay. I talk about this all the time on the podcast and with our clients when it comes to brand founders, because there's just so much wrong with the fashion industry, and it's impossible for one brand to tackle all of those issues. And in the same vein, as one consumer or one human being on this planet, it is impossible for you to tackle everything on your own. So you need to accept that you're going to be imperfect, and that is okay. I would much rather you try and not be perfect versus don't try at all because you feel like you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. So baby steps, that's really, really important. And just give yourself the grace and compassion, whether it's starting to eliminate some of the waste so that eventually you could become somewhat zero waste. Or if it's going slowly plant-based by switching out some meals a couple times a week. Or if it's just really trying to thrift more or do clothing swaps or whatever it is. But just know you will be imperfect and that is okay. But it is better to try than not try. And then step 3 is to address any shopping addictions. I talked about this with Brittany in our episode a couple weeks ago, but she talked a lot about the consumer behavior of things. And in the handbook, I actually break down why we have bad habits. High level, there's usually some sort of cue or some sort of trigger, if you will. Then we will do some sort of action, which will lead us to a reward. And so it is important for you to figure out what your cue or what your triggers are, and then what your default action is, so you can substitute it with a new action and get a similar reward. For me, back then, I would get triggered by things at work. So if I had to do something I didn't really feel like doing in terms of like the fact that it didn't align with my values or whatever, or if I got an email that I just didn't want to get, like just, those annoying things that happen at a 9-to-5 job, it would just trigger me and all that adds up. And I would seek to get a dopamine hit or seek to get positive emotions. And I would just do that by, like I said, buying clothes or going to happy hour. And when I really worked through it and journaled through it and worked with the therapist through it, I realized it was a shopping addiction. And instead, what I needed to do was replace the action I took to get that dopamine hit or that positive emotion. So now what I do is I'll either go for a walk outside, I'll go for a workout, I'll eat something. Sometimes it is junk food, which is something I'm working on, but honestly, I would much rather eat something that's a treat versus spend money frivolously. So you just want to try to substitute that. And I talk about that in the handbook so you can work through it. But I would also recommend just journaling, getting quiet, and addressing the root of this behavior, because I can sit here and tell you until I'm blue in the face that fast fashion is bad and you should buy more consciously. And I know you know that, but until you really fix what is at the root of why you're staying up at night scrolling Zara and adding things to your cart, or why you're on Shein trying to buy all these things to make yourself feel better, like until we address that, nothing's going to change. So you want to address any shopping addictions or just anything you have, just like unhealthy psychological things you have going on. So you want to address that first. And then step 4, once you've really gone through this, is to really shake it up and do something extreme. I think it's helpful to jolt the system a little bit sometimes. So for me, once I found out I had a shopping addiction and I started working on it, I did a whole year where I did not buy a single thing when it came to clothing. And the first month, it was kind of okay. And then the second, third, and fourth month, I found really, really tough. And after that, it just became second nature. So you don't have to go so extreme. I did a whole year because I really wanted to push myself. But for you, it could be a no buy month. Just 1 month, and then throughout the entire process, journal about it, really take notice of anything that's coming up. And the money you save, you can use it as a treat towards yourself. So you can use it on a vacation or launch your dream business or just put it towards your savings too for a rainy day, right? But you also just want to have something where it's a challenge so that you can reset the systems a little bit. And throughout this entire process, I would also challenge you to watch how you talk to yourself. And instead of beating yourself up every single time you see something and you want it and you're kind of battling with yourself to buy it, I would just be gentle and compassionate and realize that this is an addiction in a way. And so it is going to take time and take energy for you to battle it. Yeah, just watch how you talk to yourself and be nice and compassionate towards yourself. So step 5 is to have clothes for your lifestyle. And I talk about this in the handbook as well, but look realistically at your life and see what you actually wear and need. So as an example, if you work a corporate job and you're in the office Monday to Friday, then you need enough outfits for that. Or if you're working out a certain amount of times a week, you will need enough outfits depending on how often you wash your clothes, as an example, and weekend outfits as well. So actually look at your lifestyle and then really try to ensure that you have enough clothes to complement it. And that way, you don't just buy things frivolously, but you actually buy things for a purpose. And so see what you need. And I have a ton of exercises in the handbook to help you do that, where there's tables and you can just simply fill it out. But it is really important to be purposeful with your clothing. And then step 6 is to challenge yourself to put together outfits with the clothes you have. I find a lot of the times we feel like we can't put together outfits, and so the automatic response is to go out and buy new clothes. But sit down with your wardrobe right now and try to figure out how you can zhuzh it up and make it fun for yourself. So you can make Pinterest mood boards, you can check out stylists. My friend Elisa, she is an amazing content creator. She does beautiful capsule wardrobes. I'm going to leave her Instagram in the show notes, but check out her profile because she might also inspire you. And just find anyone else on Instagram or Pinterest or even TikTok that you like their style and use it as inspiration. And then step 7 is to actually take the clothes you have and organize it so that you actually know what's in your wardrobe. Because the amount of times I have looked at my wardrobe and been like, oh, I don't have anything to wear. And a lot of the times it's because I can't see everything and I don't know what's in there. And so organize your wardrobe in a way where you actually know what's there and you can pull pieces and it can be really effortless and fun for you. And on the flip side of that too, you want to make sure you care for your clothing. Instead of looking at clothing as a one-time thing, something that you can easily discard or do whatever with, it's important to look at them almost as investments. So care for them, make sure you're washing them properly. Look at the tags on the inside of your garments. It will give you washing instructions. And I can't tell you the number of times I have ruined really nice sweaters because I didn't know how to wash them properly, or I didn't know that they were dry clean only or whatever. So look at the tags. Your clothes are investments. So you want to make sure you're washing them properly. And in the handbook, I break down all the symbols. So you'll be able to know that. And then step 8, if you do need to bring something new into your wardrobe, then there's a few things you can do. First and foremost, you can do a swap with your friends and family. I find that's really fun. Everyone can bring 3 to 5 pieces that they don't wear anymore, and then you can just shop each other's closets, and it's free. Another thing you can do is thrift. So I know thrifting is sometimes really, I don't know, just like hard to get into. So you can look at thrift shops in your areas, read reviews, and you may need to start in a more curated thrift shop so it's a fun experience for you. But eventually, personally for me, like the thrill of the hunt and finding things and like digging through stuff is really fun. But for a first time thrifter, I completely understand that's a very overwhelming experience. And if that was my first experience, if it wasn't like a very curated or really easy shopping experience, I think I would have never done it again. So just be realistic with yourself. And then if you really can't find what you're looking for secondhand, then I would recommend you buy from a sustainable brand. And like I've been saying, understand that this is an investment. So you may have to pay a little bit more for items, but think about your cost per wear. So how many times are you able to wear this piece? And because of that, what is the actual price of it? As an example, if you buy a fast fashion sweater and it's $50, let's say, and you only wear it twice, then that's a $25 cost per wear. On the flip side, if you invest in a beautiful, great material, slow fashion sweater, and perhaps it's $200, but you wear it and like constantly throughout this year, next year, and years after, then maybe your cost per wear is closer to $2. And at the end of the day, the fast fashion sweater ends up being more. So really think about that. And I also just wanted to state sustainable fashion is more expensive than fast fashion for a variety of reasons. First and foremost, the pieces are generally higher quality, the materials are better, and better materials cost more money. And from a manufacturing perspective too, they pay their garment workers a living wage, and a living wage is not cheap. So just the materials and the manufacturing process is going to be more than fast fashion, which is why the price is what it is. So I just wanted to say that as well. It's about rethinking how much we really should be paying and making the norm no longer $5 t-shirts or $15 pairs of pants. And then step 9 is to build a community around yourself and do it together. So I highly encourage you to share this episode with your friends, especially ones that you feel like may have a shopping addiction and were kind of like me back in the day. And you can go through this together. You could do your no buy month together. You could go through the handbook together. But I really do think it's fun to band together and just have a support system. And you can keep each other accountable as well. And then last but not least, step 10 is to be kind to yourself. I talked about this a little bit already, but take it one step at a time. Don't beat yourself up. You're not going to be perfect. The goal is actually to be consistent over being perfect. So make sure you remember that. And those are the 10 steps. I hope this was helpful for you. If you are listening to this podcast, go onto YouTube. Our YouTube is just youtube.com/@Recloseted. You can also just search for Recloseted on the platform and comment on this episode and let me know which steps were helpful for you. If you knew some of this already, what you're going to implement. And as I mentioned before, I am really proud of the handbook. I really think that it could be a valuable resource for you. So you can check it out at recloseted.com/handbook and you can use code podcast for 10% off.